Hello, everybody. I'm back again here with another structured word inquiry investigation, this time from a grade 2 class at the Nueva School where I'm working right now. And this time it started in a science class and worked its way into a language class. And the background is kind of fun here where I was in Fred's science class and he had a neat activity where just simple, but just great. With drops of water, they're making observations to see how the water interacts with the surfaces of different materials. And so he had drops of water with paper towel, wax paper, tin foil, saran wrap, and the desk, as of course it spilled off onto the desk. And the kids were to observe and draw pictures and try to think about note how differently the water interact with these different surfaces, and then try to think about, why that might be. And so on the one day I was working with a bunch of kids, and Nate was a kid who was, I was talking with him, and he had just described his idea so well. And he was describing how on the wax paper, and lots of kids noticed it, but how the wax paper, the water kind of bubbled up, and you could move it around and it would kind of stick together, and they could see this big bubble of water if you looked at it from the side. But on the paper towel, it just kind of, you pluck it in and you get sucked right in there. And I asked him what he thought was going on, and I love the word that he used. He said how the paper towel was more absorbent. And I just thought, wow, what a great word to use. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, it kind of just goes right inside the paper. And the conversation went on, and he was talking about how maybe that's why water destroys paper, because it gets right inside and destroys it. So the wax paper survives the water better because it doesn't get absorbed. And I thought, wow, that's great thinking and great language. So I thought, well, absorb would be a cool word to investigate. And so the next class that I came to, I talked with Fred and said maybe we could take this word up that I had been chatting about, because it has kind of a neat, the etymology has a cool thing to it. And it turned out we just didn't have time. The kids were doing stuff, and that was cool. And so I thought, well, I'm going to be working with that same group in their language class, and I'll just investigate the word there. So I think it was the next day or two, and I go to the language class and talk to the teachers before school and mention I want to do this. Okay, that sounds great. And then I go back to my office, and then just before class, Anya comes from that class, and she handed me this piece of paper, and it turns out she and her dad had gone home, and with her dad, they did this great investigation of the word absorb, which blew me away because I hadn't told the class I wanted to do absorb. This was a conversation just between me and the other teachers. So the fact that she had picked up on this word that had got brought up in class, and that she went and did this amazing investigation, I'll show you in a second. So that I got to integrate into, I just quickly took a picture of it, put it in the slideshow, and you'll see it here in a second. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll share the story of what happened. And you can see my little title here. So what I did is before Anya came up with her message, I had written this little paragraph that I wanted to use as the context to investigate the word absorb, but I also planted some other words. This word properties was one that Fred was wanting to integrate. The word surfaces I wanted to take on. But I also just put other things in. And so when I shared this with the class, I just said, well, let's have a read of this and ask the kids to suggest words they might want to investigate. Now, the first word they picked was interact. So, okay, let's check it out. And it was quite cool. They saw the ACT base. And we talked about interact and what that meant. And someone else helped us by talking about the word react. So that was quite nice. And then someone else looked at the word differ, which I thought was great because I hadn't actually thought about that word when I wrote it. This kind of and the funny thing was how we could see that differ seems to be related to different. And maybe differ is a base, or maybe we can go deeper, but the link between differ and different was a neat one to see. And one of those cases where actually the smaller word is kind of a higher register than the longer one, which I always find fascinating. So after we investigated a couple of their words, we talked a few other things. Then I said, okay, well, I was curious about this word absorbent. And I told the story that Nate had brought this up, or I had this conversation with Nate. And I said, well, let's look at the way, here's the little reminder of the way that we investigate words. And then I got to say, well, and the amazing thing was I wanted to look at the word absorbent, but it turned out that Anya had caught the same word. And this is the piece of paper that she brought me just before class. So I was able to share this image with the class, and we took a look at what word searcher 6 results. Look how she's written her title and underlined it, organized the results. She's got some questions, just great scientific note taking here, let alone investigating. But let's take a look through. So we're looking at the structure and meaning of the word absorb. We've got our questions. So, and that's exactly, we before we got here, I should hop back here. What does it mean? And we had this idea about it being going into the paper. I shared that story. So we had what it mean. And then we looked at this idea of how is it built. And as you see, this was part of Anya's analysis, where she had this idea of AB with a SORB base. Well, does that work? Well, let's take a look. If it's true, it looks like SORB is the base, but that raises other questions. Is SORB a word, and does it even have to be a word? Well, one of the amazing things working with grade 2s at Web is that they instantly said, well, no, well, it could be a bound base, of course. So it doesn't have to be a word. So that wasn't a problem. This still would be possible. But what could that base mean? What we need now is some help from etymology. You've seen me use etym online before. I pasted in what I found there. And this is the thing that I thought was quite interesting when I looked it up, is that it has this idea of to swallow up from AB, from CAB anyways, sorbere, to suck in. And I just thought it was cool that this base means to suck in. Nate had talked about, this is what Nate had said during class, absorb means the water goes right inside. Well, this idea of sucking in certainly worked. And now we can take a look at, if SORB though is a base, it should build some other related words. And I hop over to the word searcher a lot for this kind of thing. So here we'll pop over to the word searcher and just show you how we do it, because Anya did this. She put let's put absorb here and see what other words we get. And we find these 6 words. Now, nothing hugely surprising or anything there, but we have those words. And of course, this is exactly what Anya had done. Labeled that she had these 6 results, and we'll take a look at that. But the question really is, is absorb, maybe absorb is the base, but maybe SORB is the base. So we could just go back to the word searcher, and that we just type the SORB, and now we get 8 matches, a couple more. And as Anya noted, when you go down to SORB, you get a couple more results, and here they are. And people say sherbet, some people say sorbet, and we have one, the singular and the plural here, which is hilarious, I thought, because of course I assumed that this was not related, but a nice little foil to play with. But in exactly the same point that Anya and her dad had found, which I thought was lovely. But of course, there always can be surprises. So I looked up sorbet in etym online. And as we see here, it's a noun, 1580s, a drink of fruit juice and water, from French. Well, that ET was pronounced A, that's a good sign. Probably from Italian, from Turkish, and it says see sherbet, so there's this spelling. Perhaps influenced by the Italian sorbire, I don't know how they say it, to sip. Now that was, wait a second, because we look at absorb, let me get myself out of the way here, and we start to see something going on here. Is this Italian sorbire related somehow to sorbere? This idea of to sip and to suck in? So I honestly, this is as far as I've gone. I do not know the answer here, but this actually bumps up against some things that I've been looking at with my friend Gail, When the IRE, ERE, Latin suffixes, but this is actually Italian. So I'm leaving this as an open question still. It could just be that we could put sorbet and absorb in the same matrix, but I need to get a bit more evidence in Etem Online. But the main story here is what a great combination of things. This one grade 2 student using this word absorb so confidently and then diving in, and he describes it well, but we find this suck in, and this other student, Anya, independently going home, not because it was a sign, not because anybody asked her to do anything, and doing this just marvelous investigation, recording her results, using the word searcher, noting questions, using Etem Online. This is just makes my day. And she helped the whole class learn a little bit more. And now she's posed a question. Well, she's helped me see a question to which I do not have an answer. And I hope that some of you out there will share some ideas about whether we can say that sherbet, sorbet, and absorb are related. Cheers.